Billy Mitchell, come on up. He came on through today for us. He's going to represent Chili's. Thank you for joining us. It takes time. I know this is impromptu for you, so we'll look it out.
I appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, I first had the pleasure of meeting some of you guys a few months ago. And without lying, when I talk about my history, you'll realize that much of what I was shown, I have no idea what they're talking about. Basically, I'm what you'd call a dinosaur. The very, very earliest form of what they called esports. The very first event was November 1982, and I was there. So that's my claim to fame. It was November 1982 for Life magazine in a full-page spread. There were 16 of us who were actually in the photograph. And of the 16 of us in the photograph, I'm the only one who's still active. So that's my main claim to fame, but that shows you how far back we go. The stuff that I would speak to you about or explain to you would seem so antiquated, you would think I played video games like with the Flintstones or somebody. But the fact of the matter is the technology was so primitive, you had to do a score, you had to do it at an event, and you had to do it in front of scoreboard personnel, or Guinness wouldn't accept it. There was no Twitch, there was no YouTube, there was nothing. So you had just certain weekends per year that you could go and you could do those scores. And there in Life magazine in 1982, in front of the cameras of Life magazine, in front of what was considered the 16 best video game players in the world, I did what no one else did for 22 years, and I hit a kill screen on Donkey Kong, if you can imagine how old that game is. And when I'm in the arcade and I'm playing, and I had 16 best players in the world as the score was climbing and getting to the top, and you had 16 of the best players in the world standing there doing nothing but this. That's when I actually caught a fever or a passion, and I knew there was nothing I wanted to do more than competitive gaming. That absolutely created a sickness in me that never left, and it actually transformed into most every part of my personality. I mean, whatever I did in life to make a living, I had to do it better than anybody. You know, when I didn't, I was mad as hell, and I was hard to get along with. So, but throughout the 80s, we say up until 1986, that's the way games were. And there was nothing that was gonna change them and nothing that was gonna advance them. And from 1986 all the way till 1999, there was virtually nothing competitive in the gaming world. Nothing. It's what we call the dark ages. But in 1999, when the video game boom was about 20 years, then it was nostalgic, then it was a rebirth of the golden age of video games, and they started having contests again. And the good fortune I have, and it was good fortune, was one of the signature games that I was the best at back then was Pac-Man. And there was a guy who had come along from Canada who said he was as good as he was. And since there's no cameras rolling here, I'll tell you the truth, he really was that good too. And all those years I'm sweating, I never did a perfect score, and now Johnny Come Lately is gonna beat me to the punch. I called him Canadian Come Lately is what I called him. So on the 4th of July weekend, you'd have to look up on your phone Captain Canada Pac-Man. He actually has a Canadian flag on, a cape. He calls himself Captain Canada. And I wasn't gonna be that goofy. This is what I was gonna do. Right in front of me, he played for a perfect score. I was staring just like this, and he missed it by 90 points. He 3.3 million, he missed it by 90 points. He ultimately did what he had to do right in front of me. Well, then it was my turn, and I hit the perfect score, and that went on the AP wire. That ran around the world. That's what sent me to Japan, where there was a $100,000 prize for anybody in Japan who could beat me. And nobody beat me. Let's go! But it was there that I was crowned the video game player of the century, and in 1999, that was a big deal. But remember, slowly, things came out from YouTube. Boy, what was before Twitch? There was another Justin TV. And so now, what you could do or you could do here was considered live gameplay. And the world began to connect. And I absolutely hated it with a passion because I wanted you to do it right in front of me. I wanted the pressure. When you go to the Olympics and you think you're the fastest guy, that's good. But if you can't sit on the line against the others under pressure and you can't win at that moment, then you're truly not the best. So I didn't like it, but I don't get to win every argument. You can ask my wife, believe me, I don't win every argument. But the truth is, I sort of had to roll with technology. I had to embrace it because what we began so long ago in 1982, this is what it's led to. So I have to embrace it, I have to like it, I have to appreciate it. And again, the stuff I see here, I have a hard time even comprehending. Sometimes I understand it, I do. Sometimes I ask questions, I do. And sometimes I sit there and I go, like you do when someone's talking French or something, you just go, just so you can be polite. So that's the actual truth. But after the year 2000, film crews started to follow us. We started to do movies. And the idea of actually playing or going to a place and playing was secondary compared to the interaction you had with people. And it became my job or my passion to simply do anything and everything to advocate for competitive gaming. For so long, I just wouldn't say the word esports. I would say competitive gaming. I got over that, it's esports. But again, to advocate for players to be respected, the same as athletes are respected. The idea that they should be paid based upon their performance, based upon the revenue that they create for the boss. Yes, they deserve something for how hard they worked. And me and a handful of other guys have advocated for that more than anybody. And I always say it's different when someone wants you to be at an event and they're having fun and they don't have that much revenue in their pocket. That's different. You do anything for somebody like that. But when you go to a place that draws 60,000 people and they want you to go there and perform for a handshake, I can get a handshake anywhere. I want the money. But again, everybody who performs or creates those events, I think is entitled to that respect. You work hard for that respect, the same as somebody works hard for a degree, and that's what they get paid for. So nowadays, there's people that make so much money, I'm just flat out jealous. I'd like to think that I was a small part of that, and if that's true, then that's something that gives me a lot of satisfaction. But the interaction with people, the idea of advocating for gamers, and actually interacting with kids, especially kids who can't truly play because they have different challenges, they can't handle controllers. Nintendo is creating ways that they can play based upon their handicaps. Things like that give a lot of satisfaction too. In some ways, that's where I get the most satisfaction. But by seeing those kids and seeing those struggles, that's actually the most difficult thing for me to do as well, for sure. I mean, for sure. When I see you here, and you're having fun, and everything's awesome, and then you run around and you leave the room, forgive me, but I forget about you. And the next guy's having fun, and that's true. But when you see those kids, the image of them, it gets burned right in your face. It never leaves you. It's actually really hard. It's really satisfying, but it's really hard because it makes you realize what you do and what you have. One time I went to a convention and I'm just about to start and I go, oh my God, 1 second. And I pretended like I had to go to the bathroom. But the truth was, I didn't have to the little kid who came up here to introduce me, he was 12 years old. He had every disease you could think of, everything. And he was struggling through them. And he said, what was on his bucket list was that he wanted to play at the arcade with Billy Mitchell. And I go, I'll be right back, I gotta go to the bathroom. But I didn't, I had to kind of go compose myself. Because, you know, again, that hits you hard. So you think about things like that, but then you appreciate what it brings to everybody else. The fun, the enjoyment. Maybe you make a living at the passion that you have. That's really, really, really super cool. So without a doubt, that's what I get the most satisfaction in. Last weekend, I was in New Hampshire at the world's largest arcade. The guy that owns it's 88 years old, and I went to him a couple of months ago, and I said, on the 4th of July weekend in 1999, I came here and did a perfect score. And he says, yeah. He says, and that's the signature score of my place that I've owned since 1952. And I said, okay, I said, how about if I come back on 4th of July weekend and I do it again? And he says, Billy, you think you could just walk in here and do it again? And I says, yeah, who do you think you're talking to? So I went back and I did it again. But I was asked, they go, so do you still enjoy playing? And I go, I enjoy it about as much as I enjoy chewing glass. But when you're playing, when you have your momentum, when you're succeeding, when the adrenaline gets flowing because you know you're going to reach your goal, yeah, that I like better than anything, absolutely. So the idea that people say, well, when do you think you'll stop playing? Probably when they nail my coffin shut, that'll be the day. Until then, I'll probably play right till my last day, whatever that means. But I think people also ask me, and when I say I can't understand so much of what goes on here, people say, in 1982, could you see where video games were going? And I said, no, not a chance. Anyone who tells you they could is lying. You want to say you can see a few years in advance, you can. But to see that far, there's not a chance. So then they say, well, you see where they are now? And I go, yes. They go, okay, in 20 years, where will they be? I mean, that's an even harder question. I have no clue. And I wonder if there's a single person in the audience who thinks they know the answer to that question. Because I'll wager that you don't know. So, as a matter of fact, if there's someone who wants to be brave enough, since the camera's rolling, and make a prediction that we'll play back in a few years, you can go ahead and do it. The camera doesn't see it, but there's no hands going up. So, yeah, the truth is, it's done so much for me. I've been to a few different continents. I've been asked to witness or certify different things like the largest LAN convention, which at the time was about 6,000 computers. I'm going to Australia. And I've gotten to the point now where people say, will you go here? And I'll say, yeah, but you have to bring my son too, or my wife too, because then I'm not just a derelict who plays video games, it's a family thing. So I'd like to think that I'm becoming a better person. And if I'm not, well, then I'll just lie to myself, it feels good. So I would ask anybody here if they have a question. And I really like the questions because number one, I don't know how to give short answers. But I get the guy who does this. How many quarters do you think you've spent? Really? That's the best you can do for a question? Really? And I mean, I like hard questions, even controversial questions. Oh boy, here we go.
Where do you want to see gaming go from this point forward? Where do you want to see gaming as an industry or even as just a pastime, as a hobby, go to next?
Question was, where do I want to see gaming as a passion, a hobby, or a sport? Where do I want to see it go next? Gaming is the biggest business in the world, bigger than anything. In the early 1980s, it is well documented that when the arcades came out, and video games roared, the movie industry and the music industry took a significant financial hit because of it, significant. And it's truly never recovered from there. There's not as many movie theaters now as there was then. There's not as much money made off music. The number one music CD in the world that's sold, number one, is blank. So the fact of the matter is, if there's this much money, if there's this much career, if there's this much opportunity, then everybody who plays it, everybody who creates it, everybody who makes it possible as the biggest business in the world deserves that respect, deserves that share of the industry, whether you're a player or whether you develop it or however you support it. And the fact of the matter is, what I'd like to see is that gaming is given the same respect, the same credibility as any other major sports that makes whatever ridiculous amount of money. And in trying to have a soft heart, if that means that gaming is doing something for kids who otherwise face all these challenges, if there's a way they can reach out to people so that they can enjoy them as well, well, then that'll make us all feel warm and fuzzy. It will. And we can do that as gamers, as supporters, as developers, if the money is not hoarded by a small few. And if it's more evenly distributed based upon your contribution to it, then you can go ahead and do that. I mean, I sound like a liberal, but I mean, I'm not. But if you give people the opportunity, they can produce. And when people produce, they tend to be willing to share. People tend to not be willing to share when they're barely getting by. And so again, I advocate that gamers, developers, everybody is able to share in what is no doubt now the biggest industry in the world. Everybody, not just Walmart. Like I said, I don't know how to give short answers. Okay, sir.
So can you talk?
Speak up, sir.
So can you talk about your kids and also your entrepreneurship endeavors and how your career as a video gamer made you influence you as a father, as an entrepreneur, the rest of your life?
Well, the easier one is to talk about my kids first. My daughters, two of them, they'll play games, and it's daughter, son. They'll play games, they'll play for a little while, they'll get bored and they'll run off and do something else. But my son is like this. It's like this. He had every game system there was. Companies would send me a game system and say, Billy, play this and give us your thoughts on it. Well, I'd get the system and I wouldn't get to play it because he would. And he'd constantly play it. Well, so I would ask him and he'd give a better evaluation than I would. But the truth of the matter is, he played it to an obsessive level. Obsessive. And the easy thing is, you say to yourself, when somebody does that, you have to take it away from them like anything else. But we'd be driving home from school, because I'd pick him up at school, and he's like this, and he has all his homework done before he even gets home. So I couldn't yell at him for that. He was an extreme athlete. He was a nationally ranked athlete. He worked out from the age of 7 years old, basically every day until he went to college, one way or another. But I never, ever took his game away, and I always say this when I'm at a show with kids, and there's no little kids here. I say, if you want to take away your mom and dad's authority, there's one way, because he took away my authority. He had a 4.9 grade point average. I mean, how could I take his game away? He's playing at night and I got to break his arm to go to sleep. But I couldn't take it away because he had a 4.9 grade point average. So I tell kids, you want to tell your dad what's going to happen with the games? Have a 4.9 grade point average. He'll get angry, he'll get annoyed, but he'll let you get away with it. And so that's what happened. That's what happened with him. But I was completely paranoid when he went to college because I thought, oh no, what's gonna happen? And one of the most relieving things that ever happened was he said to me, he said, Dad, when I go to college, I can't bring this with me. He goes, I need all the time I could get. And he actually didn't bring his game system with him. When he comes home to visit, I don't get to see him because he's always playing his game. But at college, he doesn't have his game. But going back to the question of you, how did gaming affect me? Well, like I said, from Life magazine and the subsequent years up until about 1986, I was so obsessive about playing, about winning, about being the best. I was so hard on myself to be better and better and better. And in 1986, I sort of had to look at myself and realize I couldn't sit there and just play video games forever, even though maybe I wanted to. There was no career, there was no future in it. I had done what I could to pave the way for the early days, but there was not that. So what I did was, I took the obsessive nature that I developed and I turned it towards our family business. And the family business we had, the main item on the menu was chicken wings. We were the second place in Florida that ever sold wings. And the main ingredient was hot sauce. So I became obsessed with the idea that I could create a sauce and a product better than anyone in the world. So the passion that was burned into me in competitiveness because of gaming easily translated into my everyday life, and without a doubt led to my success as an entrepreneur. The idea that you do something and you have to accept delayed gratification. The company that I have, the company that's created everything for me throughout my life, I actually worked at it for 12 years. I mean, think about it, 12 years. What would you ever do for 12 years? And I never was able to take $1. But then things caught, things hit, and then shortly into it, that was the only thing I did. And it was great because being the boss, being an entrepreneur, being able to set my own schedule, I drove my kids to school, I dropped them off, I picked them up. Nobody ever picked them up. They never got shuttled off somewhere. They had to go to a tutor. Okay, they went to a tutor. And it certainly made me a better father, a better parent, because it gave me more versatility and certainly more understanding of what it was they needed, without a doubt. That's your short answer. All right, sir, you got all these smiles here. You're in the front row. What's your question? The pressure is really on you now.
So I had a question at the beginning.
Yes, sir, I'm ready.
And it was, why? Why did you start doing what you were doing? Why did you go to those arcades? Did you know that you would win? Did you obsess about winning in the same way that you said you obsessed about the gaming? Was it something that was always on your mind, or did you just get up one day and say, well, this is what I'm going to do now? Like,
good question. My question is, why did I develop that obsessive nature about gaming to want to win? Before I was a gamer, I was hardcore into pinball. When I go to pinball conventions, they ask me, when did you turn to the dark side? Is what they say. But the truth is, I don't really embrace change easily, as you can see. I tend to, and the fact is, I was a hardcore pinballer, and when video games came out and started taking over the scene, I was sort of pushing them back. Until finally, there wasn't enough competition on pinball machines, and I thought, oh, okay, I guess I gotta play if I want competition. And there was this big yellow cabinet called Pac-Man in the way that everyone was standing around. I couldn't hardly get to that cabinet, but somehow I got to the Donkey Kong cabinet, and I started playing and beating my friends, which wasn't any big deal. But then I was beating, actually I thought of this, the one guy in school, I feel so bad as I look back on it, the guy that was picked on, bullied, I mean the geek of geeks, the guy that was smacked in the hall He was a nice guy. He didn't do anything to deserve this. Not that I did it, but I just saw it happen constantly. And one day I met him in the arcade. He was there with somebody I knew, and I said something, or I hit his hand or something. He's a little weasel of a kid that didn't ever speak in school. And I did something that hit his hand while he was playing Atari football, and he turned and he slapped me in the head. I mean, me. I mean, I roared, like, who's this guy think he is? And I eventually became friends with him because he was a totally different person in the arcade, being out of that bullying atmosphere. But I couldn't let the littlest, geekiest kid in school be better than me, and he was really good. And so it began as a pursuit to get better than him. And when I eventually went past him, which wasn't easy, it was, is there anybody else that they can beat me? And then it was, well, let me go to this arcade. Oh, I heard about that. So I'm traveling around the state to different arcades, looking at high scores, seeing that nobody could actually beat me. Then my family went to the World's Fair. Every time the car stopped, I'm running around looking at the high scores on the Donkey Kongs. And I just gained the idea that there's nobody in the world who could possibly be as good as me. And I called Nintendo, and they go, oh, we don't know, we don't keep scores. No idea? And they go, no. And they gave me the number to the local distributor here. And the guy says, we don't know about scores, son. We just collect quarters. And I go, oh, no good. You call Guinness? Nothing. I called back to Nintendo, and they said, well, the high score is probably like 150,000. And I said, oh, earlier today I got 287. And suddenly somebody in the office wanted to talk to me because it's the highest they heard of. But there was still no governing body. And finally, I was led to the governing body, which was based out of Iowa. And it was that and those scores that led me to Life magazine. But it was that experience at Life magazine, because I stole the show, because I hit that score in front of the cameras, in front of everybody, that's when I became so obsessive. I had to have more. I had to have more victory. I had to have more competition. I had to know that I could, even when there was nobody left for me to squash, then I was really hard on myself at the game itself. Why can't I get higher and higher and higher? And then I hit the kill screen where the game crashes. And there I felt a level of satisfaction. I finally beat the computer. And so that caused me to move on to other games where I would play them to the end until I crashed them, like Pac-Man, like Miss Pac-Man, and on and on. That was another short answer. But the truth is, because of that hard work, because I know how hard I worked at it, that's what makes me have so much respect for the people who play and the people who put games together and all of the passion that they have, because it takes so much work to get to that level, and therefore those people deserve the respect, and they deserve their part of the industry, their recognition, because they've put together something that so many people can enjoy. Again, more people enjoy video games than enjoy music, than enjoy movies. Why shouldn't they have that same respect? They should. So it all actually folds together quite well. Okay, you keep shaking your head constantly. So now I'm going to embarrass you if you don't have a question.
I can't say anything because they're recording and I could get in trouble. Nope. I work for companies. I'm not going to say anything.
Okay, then come come whisper to me a question.
It's not a question.
Okay.
It's more of agreement.
Okay, come
I
agree
agree
with
with
me.
you.
Come agree with me. You tell me and I'll expound on it.
So it was basically disagreeing.
Right. So basically, somebody in the audience told me that this guy, well, I won't say what you said, I'll say what the other guy said. What this guy said is exactly that. Working, being a part of what creates a game, whether it's doing voiceovers, testing, anything, you're an intricate part of what creates a game, the final product that goes out to the industry, that the industry enjoys, so many people enjoy so much, that makes zillions of dollars and establishes such solid entertainment and financial foundation. Yes, those people are talented, and probably because they do it, because it's a passion they love, and I guess because you can count on them doing it anyway, because it's a passion, in a lot of ways they're taken advantage of, because you know they're going to do it anyway. They're not going to walk out on you, so we don't have to treat them better than we otherwise should. And the truth is, we should. Let me ask you, would you agree with that? Okay. Next, you got in the front row because you knew me, okay? And you shook your head a lot, and now it's your job to fire a question.
A question, okay.
And the tougher the question, the better.
So, you talked about like not understanding like a lot of the new technologies and stuff like that. Do you see yourself adapting to these new platforms like Twitch and YouTube, and you streaming and trying to share more of the original culture of the game, the retro, what we call retro culture of video gaming? Because I feel like that's something that people need to like see and understand and learn more about.
Absolutely awesome question. And you're going to like this answer. People say, so on any of the modern platforms, do you play anything? Or what do you play? And the short answer and the long answer is one word: no. But there's a reason. First of all, I watch my son play. He's got the control in his hand, and I'm looking at his fingers, and at any given time, he's moving at least 9 fingers. That's outrageous. I mean, a joystick and a button. That's retro. That's the first reason. The second reason is, I don't want to play anything he can beat me at. He can beat me at every single one. Everyone. I don't know of one that I could beat him at. So that's the reason why I don't embrace to any serious degree. But I recognize the technology and quality. It's unbelievable. It's beyond anything that I can even describe. However, the new technology, we'll pick on the fact you mentioned Twitch. So it was last June. My son came home and he said, "Dad, you'd have to understand he's very assertive. He doesn't get intimidated. When he was about 15, he said something silly. I go, oh, come on, and I smacked him in the shoulder. And I thought I hit a tree. And I thought, well, I'm not going to do that anymore. So he doesn't get intimidated. He says, Dad, I'm setting this up. I'm setting up a Twitch here. I'm going to tell your friend we want a Donkey Kong. He goes, I'll have the Twitch set up, and you're going to start streaming Donkey Kong. I go, I ain't doing that. Yeah, and I go, no, I'm not. I ain't doing it. He goes, I'm doing that. And I go, well, you do it. You have fun. He did exactly what he said he was going to do, and the Twitch was there, and we were a Twitch associate, I think they call it. Twitch affiliate, that's it. See, I don't even know that. So he's playing, but he's my son. He's home from college, and he's playing. So, I mean, I go over, he's playing, and it's my son. So, no, it's really fun. It's cool. And I don't care about the Twitch. It's fun. He and I are sharing a passion. And not many fathers share a passion with their kids who are in college. The passions are usually way far apart. And so he's playing, and he's got me playing. And then suddenly, like that was in June he said he's going to do it. We started doing it in July. And only partway into the month, I started pounding out scores, like old-fashioned scores. Well, then it was fun. And then suddenly, we went from a Twitch affiliate to a Twitch partner. And then I was told that of, as you call retro gamers, we were the only Twitch partner there was. There's a zillion Twitch partners on everything else. You know, Fortnite and all the way back. And I go, wow. Well, then I'm streaming, and hundreds of different names, and the followers are in the thousands, and I'm seeing people and names from history, friends, people I cross paths with, people I used to play with. Well, no, now it's really cool. Now it's a friendship, it's a community, it's something I'm doing with my son. Even when he went back to school, you know, he's on watching, and it was a complete connection that we had. So I continued to do it. We continued to make predictions. Oh, I'll do 1 million points this week. When I said I did 1 million points this week, I did it 3 times in 1 week. And then we predicted different scores, and it was fun and it was challenging. And then we moved to other games. Then people that you know that you're friends with already, or you become friends with, then they're requesting that you do stuff. Then people are saying, gee, can you send me a poster? Can you send me a headshot? To be honest, it's overwhelmingly flattering. The friendship is just too powerful to say no to. Like, that's why I brought a bunch of posters today. And it just easily becomes a part of your personality. That's what you want to do, as opposed to going to the bar for 2 hours. You know, I always say to people, well, I don't like it, my boyfriend plays games for 2 hours every day when he comes home. I says, hide the game and tell him he has to go to the bar and drink for 2 hours. Maybe you'd like that better. A little bit of a wise guy coming out in me. But no, so I do see myself embracing at least some aspects of today's gaming world, some of which I recognize I'll never catch up to speed. But I have such respect for him because, again, in my own world, I played a part of where it began. We traveled around the country pushing competitive gaming. We spent our own money, our own car, our own gas. We were running, and we didn't necessarily even know where we were running to. We were just running forward, pushing the situation. And it turned out very good, at least for me. Another short answer. Yes, sir, you have a question?
So, for career development, looking at someone with esports or helping with the children, like you said, how would you go about something like that? Like, what would you recommend?
I get asked that question all the time. They said when a kid shows up and he gets off the bus from Iowa and he says he wants to be an esport gamer, what do you tell him? Well, the first thing I tell him is to get back on the bus and go back. But it's the same answer. You know, my son was a nationally ranked athlete, football, lacrosse too, but football was his passion. And he had an academic foundation to back up. So regardless of what happened, he would have that foundation. And I would put esports the same way. If you want to completely rely on it, on that and nothing else, likely you're going to have a hard life. I mean, you just are. I can't tell you how many people played football, played baseball, played lacrosse, played hockey, played basketball, and they were going to be the #1 thing in the world. And now they come to the back of my dad's restaurant asking for a job as a short order cook. If you take the same passion you have in gaming, just like in football, if you take that same passion and you pour it into everything you do, meaning your academics, you'll set a foundation that'll give you the freedom to pursue something like esports, and you'll either pursue it and succeed, or you'll pursue it and have fun. But either way, you'll pursue it and you'll have a secure life. I just, you gotta be careful. The stories are, the stories are awesome. The great stories, I can tell you great stories about Michael Jordan, and I can tell you stories on the other end of the spectrum. And you never know exactly where you're gonna fall because everybody's given a different set of DNA. It's just the way it is. He said if you don't have a question, he's gonna give you a hard time.
there's one question, a little off topic, because me and my team here, we're a bunch of musicians, and I wanted to know what you felt about maybe a compare and contrast between some of the music originating with the original concepts of gaming to what they have now, and how that's developed over the course of decades.
Okay. I'm going to answer a question that I don't know a lot about.
Sure.
But back in the day of gaming, and probably music too, for example, when the guy created Pac-Man, he worked on it for 2 years, almost 2 years, basically by himself. And then he says, okay, at this point I need a sound guy. Okay, at this point I need a graphics guy. He pulled in about a half a dozen people at different times, but it was one person who went so far in depth. And I don't want to say he was completely alone, because he could call people in whenever he needed them, but it took this much time. And I'd imagine music was very much the same. Now, when a game's developed, it'll be about 40 people involved, and it'll take about 2 months. That's just speed, that's just technology. And I'm only guessing, just guessing, that music is similar. Because since you guys are in the music business, you'd be foolish not to take advantage of the technology. It's absolutely true. And the music that's put in video games now, again, I would be foolish. I'd love to, have a victory for retro games. The music today, just like the graphics, is so unbelievably advanced, outstanding. It's beyond any marvel that could ever have been imagined then. So, I guess what you're doing right. I appreciate it very much. She's all happy about that answer. But you won't get her to say why, will you? All right, that's it. Play to win. And remember, don't let the bastards get to you.